Zohran Mamdani, the communist terror-supporting candidate for mayor of New York, recently gave an interview to Fox News in which, among other things, he talked about the ceasefire deal in Gaza and the release of the Israeli hostages. What do you think? Do you think he'll give some credit to President Trump for brokering this deal? Do you think he'll hold Hamas accountable and demand of them to implement another part of that deal, which is for them to disarm and not to continue to govern Gaza and try to destroy Israel? Something tells me that's not what is going to happen. But look, let's take a look and see what he says.
Thank you very much for being here. Candidate for mayor of New York City, you're up by 13 points. It looks like you've got the wind at your back. You've got a big debate coming up tomorrow night with the other candidates, Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. Obviously, New York City policy is front and center, but I would imagine that some of the big headlines recently are going to come up tomorrow night as well. So I want to get to all the policy issues in New York, but I wanted to ask you this first. If you are asked tomorrow night, if you give credit to President Trump for the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas and the return of the 20 living hostages, would you raise your hand?
You know, first I want to say it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. And it's an honor to have this opportunity to speak to so many New Yorkers and Americans across the country.
Nice deflection.
And when it comes to the ceasefire, I am thankful, and I have hope that it will actually endure and that it will be lasting. And I continue to have concerns because I've seen reports still, just this in the last few days, that 5 Palestinians were killed by the Israeli military. And that's what gives me pause about issuing any kind of praise or celebration at a moment when it is still so in its infancy. And
what about the Palestinians that were executed by Hamas, Zohran Mamdani? Did you talk about that?
I will tell you is that in that same moment, it is also one that requires a focus on ensuring that that hope, that belief in a better future is one that is emblematic in our policies right here in New York City as well. And that's what we're hoping to lead with.
So would you give President Trump credit or not, to any extent? Credit or not?
I think it's too early to do so.
Too early to say.
But if it proves to be something that is lasting, something that is durable, then I think that that's where you give credit.
So you've denounced Israel and the United States for the response to the slaughter on October the 7th. In fact, at times you've called it a lasting stain, the response, and at times you have left October 7th out of your statements completely around this issue. Right now, you just talked about Israelis killing some Palestinians, but Hamas is killing Palestinians within Gaza. And they have not returned the bodies that they promised to return, including 2 Americans, Itai Chen and Omer Nutra, whose families we have interviewed over these months. So what is your response to what Hamas is doing now?
I think those are bodies and remains that should absolutely be returned. And I think that I have no issue with critiquing Hamas or the Israeli government, because my critiques all come from a place of universal human rights. And my focus, however, is right here in New York City and transforming the most expensive city in America into one that's affordable for each and every New Yorker.
But, OK, and I want to get to that, absolutely. But do you believe that Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza?
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all. And as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there is peace. And that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety and the fact that anything has to abide by international law. And that applies to Hamas, that applies to the Israeli military, applies to anyone you could ask me about.
OK. One last thought on that. You have said that you would arrest Netanyahu if he came to the United States. You've been very outspoken in your criticism of him. Do you stand by that? You would arrest him if he came here, if you were mayor?
I've said that this is a city that believes in international law, and this is a city that wants to uplift and uphold those beliefs. The Prime Minister...
The United States doesn't stand by the International Criminal Court.
It hasn't signed the treaty for the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court, however, has issued a warrant for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu.
But what grounds in the United States could you arrest him on?
As it has for Vladimir Putin. I've said that I believe that we should uphold arrest warrants by the International Criminal Court, and that we should do so only in abiding with all of the laws in front of us. I'm not going to make a new law to ensure that we can actually do this.
Do you think that Commissioner Tisch would allow you to arrest Netanyahu in New York City?
I've appreciated Commissioner Tisch's leadership of the NYPD, and I think that she's done a good job at lowering crime across the city.
But do you think that she would go along with arresting Netanyahu in New York?
I can tell you that I'm going to exhaust every legal option in front of me, not to make new laws to do so.
All right, so we got that business at the top of the interview. Coming up as part two.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Slippery one is that Zohran Mamdani. That smile with like it doesn't reach his eyes. This sleazy smile of his. You know, he uses a lot of fancy language. Ooh, we abide by international law and so forth. Come on, man. Come on. I mean, what can I say? It's very telling, that section where he talks about the fact that there were some Palestinians who were killed after the ceasefire. Possibly they were beyond the ceasefire zone in the parts of Gaza where the Israeli military still is. I don't know the exact details of what was going on there, but he didn't say anything about the fact that Hamas is literally executing people in the Gaza Strip, dissidents, against their rule, and the fact that they need to properly disarm in order for there to be any type of rebuilding in Gaza. He says, I want to see peace. I want, he's like very general stuff while putting all of the onus on Israel, on the United States, never mentioning really October 7th. Then like when it's put to him, he's like, oh yeah, I'm against that. And then he goes back to his normal talking points. Very slippery one is that Zohran Mamdani. Very, very slippery one. But we know what he is. He's one of these kind of like communist, anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Israel, sympathetic to Islamist terrorists characters. It comes from his father, who was like this anti-colonialism professor or something in Uganda, I think it was, where he comes from like an Indian family in Uganda. When I was in Uganda, I met like Indians in Uganda who are Ugandan citizens in Eastern Africa. It's something that's imbued in him. But yeah, people need to be very, very scared of what that man being mayor of New York could mean, not just because of his pro-terror sympathies, but also because, all those other policies, which was the next part of the interview that we didn't show, of like free groceries and sanctuary city in New York and no billionaires in New York. That's what makes New York, one of the things that makes New York what it is. It's like a capital center of all the industry and business and entertainment and all those other things in the United States. And that's going to involve billionaires as well. If you want to drive out all the major business figures from New York City and think it's going to remain the same, well, I don't know. Be my guest, my friend. Be my guest. All right, that's all for this clip, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.